Finance Committee will come to order. The committee meets this morning to discuss 3 nominations to the U.S. Tax Court. I'll begin with Jeffrey Arbeit, who has served for nearly a decade as legislation counsel with the staff of the Joint Committee on Taxation. He works there focused on some of the most complicated issues of tax law, including international taxation, as well as financial assets, transactions, and markets. Mr. Arbeit also brings private sector experience and clerked on the tax court. And suffice it to say, we understand we've got a fair number of guests in the House from the Joint Committee on Taxation. Big fans of Jeffrey Arbeit, and we welcome them, and we appreciate all the work that JCT does for us. I'll take the opportunity to repeat what I said at the last hearing when Kashi Wei's nomination was up for discussion. We are big fans, as I just touched on, of the good people over at JCT. We couldn't do our jobs without their professionalism and expertise. As sorry as we are to lose them when these nominations come up, our loss is the country's gain. Next up, Kathy Fung is the Deputy Area Counsel at the IRS Office of Chief Counsel. She's held multiple positions there since 2009. Like Mr. Arbeit, she also brings very valuable private sector experience, previously served as an attorney advisor for a tax court judge. Benjamin Geider has experience spanning a decade and a half advising clients on a variety of tax issues. Those include low-income housing and tax-exempt bonds. He's currently an affordable housing attorney and a member of the American Bar Association Forum on Affordable Housing and Community Development Law. So I'll just wrap up because I think we've got 3 very talented nominees today by saying we appreciate their willingness to serve on the tax court. The tax court is an essential feature of our tax system, and it's the best opportunity Americans have to dispute a bill before they actually have to pay. It's a major source of fairness for taxpayers, and it relieves a lot of pressure that would otherwise fall on other parts of the judicial system. So big thanks to our nominees. We look forward to question and answer. Senator Crapo.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I second your comment on the importance to American taxpayers to have fairness and what they hope for to get out of the tax court. I also welcome our 3 nominees, Mr. Arbeit, Ms. Fung, and Mr. Geider. Congratulations on your nominations, and thank you all for your willingness to serve. This committee convened last month to consider 3 other nominees to be judges for the U.S. Tax Court. During that hearing, I discussed the tax court's unique role as a forum for the resolution of disputes between taxpayers and the IRS. The tax court plays a vital role in the maintenance of our tax laws, and the judges nominated to these positions must be prepared to carry out their duties with the highest degree of skill and integrity. It is essential to keep the tax court staffed with highly qualified judges to ensure that taxpayers receive fair, impartial, and efficient hearings. If confirmed, each of you will play a critical role in upholding the public trust in our nation's tax system, which American taxpayers expect and deserve. I thank each of our nominees for their dedication to our country. I look forward to hearing your testimony today, and thank you again, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator Crapo. Brief introduction for our nominees. We touched on your background earlier. Jeffrey Arbeit clerked on the tax court, served for nearly a decade as legislative counsel over at Joint Committee on Taxation. Kathy Fung clerked on the tax court, has held several important positions in the IRS Office of Chief Counsel. Ben Geider has worked for a decade and a half advising his clients on a variety of issues. Thank you again to our nominees. What we're going to do is we'll enter your prepared remarks into the record. They'll be included in their entirety. Mr. Arbeit, why don't you proceed, and then we'll have some questions.
Thank you, Chairman Wyden, Ranking Member Crapo, and distinguished members of the committee. Testifying before you today is an honor. I'm grateful to President Biden for nominating me to be a judge on the United States Tax Court. I also want to thank the Senate Finance Committee staff for their guidance throughout this process. For the last 9 years, I've had the privilege of serving members of Congress, including members of this committee, as a lawyer on the nonpartisan staff of the Joint Committee on Taxation. My days have been spent working closely on policy from its origin as an idea to its progression to a draft, to the long process of refining language and mechanics, all on a nonpartisan basis. During my time at the Joint Committee on Taxation, I've been privileged to work with members and their staff across the political spectrum on a wide variety of issues affecting taxpayers, both large and small. If confirmed, my focus will shift from proposals regarding what the law might be to cases disputing what the law is. Most cases before the tax court involve individuals, and in many cases, those individuals represent themselves. Their time before the court can be life-changing. I will seek to serve them as I have served you, fairly and evenly. I will also strive to apply the lessons I learned clerking for Judge James S. Halpern of the United States Tax Court, without whose support I would not be here today. Clerking for Judge Halpern taught me to assess opposing arguments, think critically about differing interpretations of the law, and express complicated concepts clearly in writing. Above all, he demonstrated how to treat all taxpayers fairly and with compassion. I cannot thank him enough. I also want to thank Professor Ted Sims of Boston University Law School, my former colleagues at Sullivan and Cromwell, and my current colleagues at the Joint Committee on Taxation, especially our Chief of Staff, Tom Barthold. Finally, I want to thank my parents, Susan and Robert, my sister, Miriam, and her partner, Jillian Schmidt. I appreciate the opportunity to appear before you today, and I look forward to answering your questions.
Mr. Guider.
Good morning. Thank you, Chairman Wyden, Ranking Member Crapo, and other esteemed members of the Finance Committee. I am extremely grateful to all of you, as well as your staff members, for the opportunity to testify before you today. I am thankful to the President for nominating me to serve on the United States Tax Court, and to his staff for their help throughout this process. I would also like to thank my wife, Julia, and our children, Benjamin, June, and Sarah. I would not be here without their love and support, nor would I be here without the love and support of my parents, Ben and Linda Guider. Thank you to them and to all my family and friends who have played roles large and small in my presence here today. Finally, I would also be remiss if I did not express my gratitude to Kelly Longwell, my mentor and colleague. As attorneys, we learn and grow by reading, researching, and practicing the law. But our mentors add invaluable perspective and experience, which benefits us immeasurably along the way. Thank you to her and to all the other attorneys whose knowledge, support, and guidance have helped me in my journey here. For the last 15 years, I've spent my career at Coates Rose and then Longwell Reese as a tax credit lawyer, specializing in low-income housing and historic rehabilitation credits, and working through the challenges that taxpayers encounter in earning those credits. I've seen how the tax code can be a tool to restore a building in a neighborhood that badly needs revitalization, or to provide housing for individuals or families of low and moderate income. It has been incredibly rewarding to represent clients who believe in such work. I've devoted my legal career to work that benefits communities, especially those of low and moderate income. I would like to continue that spirit of service by being a judge of the tax court in the service of our country and its taxpayers, particularly those who find themselves before the tax court and may be of limited experience or resources. I believe that the experience and knowledge I have gained and the analytical mindset and abilities I have developed over my career would serve me well as a judge on the tax court, a position that demands those attributes. If confirmed, I will be methodical, fair, and impartial as I apply the law to the facts of each case before me. Senators, it would be an honor to serve our country in the capacity of judge on the tax court. If confirmed, I pledge to perform the job to the best of my abilities for the duration of my term. Thank you again for the opportunity to be here today. It is truly an honor, and I look forward to any questions that you may have.
You'll have some. Thank you, Mr. Guider. Ms. Fung.
Senator Wyden, Ranking Member Crapo, and distinguished members of this committee, thank you for giving me the opportunity to be before you today to consider my nomination to serve as a judge on the United States Tax Court. I am grateful to you and your staffs for your time and for scheduling this hearing today. It is truly a privilege to be nominated as a judge for the United States Tax Court. I am grateful to President Biden for nominating me for this important position. I would like to acknowledge my parents who are attending to my dad's surgery today and watching the live feed in California. Their sacrifices and support have allowed me to be in a position to appear before you today. I would like to thank my siblings for their encouragement and enthusiasm in this process. My brother Tony flew in from Seattle to be with me today, and my sister Sandra, who lives in New York, is also watching us on the live feed. I would like to acknowledge Judge Robert A. Weary Jr., now a retired judge on the United States Tax Court, for his fellowship and mentorship. And I want to acknowledge my friends and colleagues who provide support to me every day. They are my DC family, and many of them are here with me today. I am the child of immigrant parents. My mother arrived in this country as a child, along with her parents and 4 siblings by boat. My father arrived in this country as a young adult, separated from his parents. Each of my parents left their birth country for a better life and the promise of achievable opportunities. Through them, I have seen the epitome of hard work, perseverance, and integrity. As my parents pursued their American dream, they instilled in my siblings and me a tireless and principled work ethic. I've taken their experiences and lessons to heart and followed their example as the framework with which I've approached my career and my life. The tax court has always been a special place for me. It's where I started my legal career as an attorney advisor to Judge Weary, and where I witnessed the daunting tasks that self-represented taxpayers face when presenting their cases. I am sensitive to the fact that standing before a judge may be the first time taxpayers have had the opportunity to interact with their government. This backdrop shapes what would be my judicial comportment if I am confirmed. I pledge to listen to all facts with an open mind and to treat all taxpayers fairly and with the respect that all taxpayers should expect and deserve from their government. Over the past 20 years in private practice and in the government, I learned about complex tax issues, both in the guidance and litigation areas. I represented large corporate taxpayers in their tax controversy and litigation, and I devoted my time to representing taxpayers pro bono through low-income taxpayer clinics. At the IRS Office of Chief Counsel, I gained knowledge in drafting regulations to aid taxpayers in providing certainty to accomplish effective tax administration. In all instances, I have been a faithful public servant in applying the tax laws with diligence, integrity, and fairness. If confirmed, I would continue this responsibility to the American people in impartially applying the law to the facts of each case. 20 years ago, I embarked on my first legal job as an attorney advisor at the United States Tax Court. If confirmed, it would be my greatest honor to rejoin the tax court family, support the court's mission to resolve tax disputes expeditiously, and continue my government service as a judge. Thank you for your consideration. I look forward to your questions.
Thank you very much. All of you have outlined your views very well, and let me make sure everybody understands where we are. We've got some obligatory questions that we have to ask each of the nominees, so we'll go through that and get an answer from each of you. First, is there anything that you're aware of in your background that might present a conflict of interest with the duties of the office to which you've been nominated? We'll just go right down the row. Mr. Arbite?
No.
Mr. Guider?
No.
No.
Very good. Do you know of any reason, personal or otherwise, that would in any way prevent you from fully and honorably discharging the responsibilities of the office to which you've been nominated? Mr. Arbite?
No.
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 Third, do you agree without reservation to respond to any reasonable summons to appear and testify before any duly constituted committee of the Congress if you are confirmed? Mr. Arbite?
Yes.
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 Finally, do you commit to providing a prompt response in writing to any questions addressed to you by any senator of the committee?
Yes.
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 Okay. So let me start it this way. Without going into all the details of my shady past, before I was in public service, I ran the legal aid program for the elderly, for senior citizens. I was director of the Gray Panthers, and I saw particularly how often Americans, particularly the elderly, but people of all ages, just found the court system incomprehensible and really couldn't figure out how it might work to address, their concerns. And so we made a special focus of trying to help those folks wend their way successfully through the judicial system. And many taxpayers who appear before the tax court are not represented by counsel. So whenever I think about the tax court, I think about those days with seniors and at legal aid. And these folks appear before the tax court. They don't have counsel. They're representing themselves pro se, come to court on a tax issue, which certainly can be confusing and certainly sometimes be intimidating. And I'd like to just go down the row. We'll start with you, Mr. Arbite, and have each of you describe in the best way possible what you feel you can do to make sure that they're going to get a fair shake in that court. Mr. Arbite.
Chairman Wyden, You're correct. Going before the tax court can be life-changing. If confirmed, I will make sure all taxpayers know their rights and understand the legal process, which is essential for a fast and fair resolution of their cases. There are many opportunities for this, even before a trial. To give just one example, I will make sure taxpayers know when they may have access to pro bono legal representation, whether through a clinic, a law firm, or some other service.
So, Mr. Geider, also, I've gone through your qualifications and your background, and I'm going to support your nomination. I know that this has not been an area that you have spent a lot of time on, so I'd be very interested in what you'd like to do, given your particular background, to make sure that those folks who don't have counsel and come into this system, this odd kind of structure for them, what you can do to make sure they get a fair shake.
Certainly. Thank you, Senator. I do come from somewhat of a different world, but I think I do have experience, working with clients. And while they're not pro se before the tax court, they may have limited experience. So I've found myself in situations where I've needed to sort of explain things to them. And I think I could, carry that approach forward into this service. I think my first step at the court would just be about communication with those litigants, via the court website or email communications or mailers, just so that they understand the status of their case or the procedures that they need to undergo to process it successfully. So there would be that kind of outreach. I might, in advance of hearing day, set up an informational call so they can call in and learn about what to expect day of, what to bring with them, just so that they can be better prepared for the process. And then I think, when they're appearing before me, whether it's via Zoom or in a courtroom, just treating them with respect and dignity and patience and understanding that they're coming from a place where they might not understand the process very well.
Were some of those conversations you had in, as we always say, our previous life in terms of housing and the like, were some of those instances where you were trying to explain to people some of the housing issues that you were working on?
Yes, Senator. I mean, that revolved around housing issues as well as, the portions of the code that related to those relevant credits and, perhaps the portions of the code that relate to partnership law, which is often how those transactions are structured.
That's a piece of cake. Everybody knows partnership. I see all the attorneys in the background howling. Okay, thank you. That was what I was interested in hearing from you. Ms. Fung, your thoughts. What are you going to do when confirmed? Because I believe we're going to get all three of you confirmed, and we've been working in a bipartisan way. Senator Crapo, Senator Cassidy, we're all trying very hard to get this done quickly because we know people need this service. And your thoughts, Ms. Fung?
Yes, Senator. Certainly every taxpayer deserves to be heard, and especially in someone who is pro se in a fair and impartial forum. I would essentially ensure that they have all the information that they need before trial. I would specifically point them to the tax court's website, where there is information on how the process of a tax court case works, and I would schedule pre-trial meetings or conferences to ensure that they understood the process from essentially my standpoint, and that they had an introduction to the process.
Good. I very much appreciate your answers, and I'd like you three, with our other three, to be part of the group that really in the future people talk about as exceptionally committed to throwing open this odd, system. My wife basically told me at one point, she said, I'm going to marry you because you're not really a real lawyer. He said, you're somebody who runs the legal aid program for the elderly and the like. And, I think that's an expression of what a lot of people feel when they're up against this bizarrely unusual system for people who don't have the experience. And I'd like to see you all go into the history books as the group that really made a difference in terms of taking this oddly complicated system and making it intelligible to folks who don't have power, don't have clout, don't have counsel. And Senator Crapo.
Well, first of all, thank you, Mr. Chairman, for your questions, because they are exactly the line of questioning that I want to pursue. And so, I also very much appreciated the answers that each of you have already given to this. I don't want you to just restate what you just said. I'm going to go through a little bit of a question here along the same lines that Senator Wyden did, and just ask you to make a brief commitment that you will work to achieve fairness in the judicial system that you will administer. But to lead up to that, as Senator Wyden has already said, the tax code is often perceived, particularly by those who do not have the resources to hire an army of lawyers to help them. It's incomprehensible. I can remember, in terms of the complexity of the tax code, this is going back about 15 or 20 years, so I may have the recollection wrong here, but it seems to me that one of our national magazines about 15 or 20 years ago created a family of four example and gave it a few little tax twists, and then hired 3 or 4 different tax preparer types to do the taxes for this family of 4. Not a super complicated deal, but just some things with a few tax issues in it. And of the people that they hired to do the tax returns for this sample family, they got 3 or 4 different answers for what the tax return ought to look like. The code is that complicated. And when you can imagine a citizen who's brought into court by the IRS, one of the more feared agencies in the United States, they are scared when they come into your courtroom. And they want to know that they're going to get fairness. And so that's exactly where my questions come down. Add to this the fact that the IRS Office of Chief Counsel is responsible for representing the government in matters before the tax court, and it will be there in the courtroom in every one of these cases. And the American people know that. And I think that I know that what Senator Wyden and I are both angling for here is just a solid commitment from you that you will assure that the taxpayers receive fairness. I don't need you to go into a detailed explanation, but just please give me that commitment that the taxpayers will receive fairness in your courtrooms.
Ranking Member Crapo, thank you. You're absolutely correct. Fairness is the foundation of our court systems and needs to be the foundation of our tax system. And so, as a judge, I commit to treating all taxpayers fairly and evenly. And part of that is communication and making sure that there are no surprises, that they know what's coming, they understand their rights, they understand the process.
All right, thank you. Mr. Guider, just quickly, will you assure that there will be fairness in your courtroom?
Yes, absolutely, Senator.
Ms. Fung?
I also commit to fairness in the courtroom, Senator.
All right. Now, the reason I wanted you to be quick is because I have a second question, and it's another angle on this very issue. Less than 2 weeks ago, the Supreme Court overturned the legal doctrine that courts should defer to an agency's interpretation of an ambiguous statute, the so-called Chevron doctrine. In light of this court case, there will be heightened importance for judicial awareness of agencies' actions and review of agencies' interpretations of the very law that will be interpreted in your courtrooms. If confirmed, and upon initial impression, how would you face this challenge of scrutinizing regulatory actions? For example, would you be willing to rule that a Treasury regulation is invalid if the guidance does not align with the statutory language and the legislative history? Mr. Arbite.
Ranking Member Crapo, thank you. The foundation of every legal analysis is finding an interpretation that is consistent with the statute and that reflects the intent of Congress. So, yes.
Mr. Guider.
Senator, thank you. Yes, the Supreme Court has said that the tax court, for example, will no longer simply defer to the agency's interpretation. We have to conduct, assuming I'm confirmed, conduct our own analysis of the code and the regulation. So I will be fully prepared to do that.
Thank you. Ms. Fung.
Yes, Senator. essentially looking at the law as provided and looking at everything in terms of intent. And obviously, if the goal is to get to the right answer, and so that's what we need to do in terms of looking at the law before us.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. And as you could tell, both of us are very interested in seeing something resembling a more comprehensible judicial system, a fair system. Just one point with respect to Chevron, because my guess is this is going to be a lawyer's full employment program for many, many years in terms of wending its way through the courts and everybody's interpreting it. What's important, and I'm going to do everything I can to build bipartisan support here in the committee and in the Senate for following congressional intent, because that's really, if we're going to hold people accountable, if you get an election certificate, you're writing the law, you're spelling things out, we want it followed. I don't believe we've got any members on their way. Senator Crapo, is there anything you want to add?
I'm done.
Okay. I will just add that we very much appreciate all three of your presentations here today. Based on what I have heard, I strongly support these nominations. I'm going to urge all members to do so. Senator Crapo and I work hard to proceed in a bipartisan way here. And Senator Cassidy and others have been talking with us, and I support all three of you, Jeffrey Arbeit and Kathy Fung. Both of you clerked on the tax court. You've held government posts where they developed extensive tax experience. Mr. Guider has worked for a decade and a half advising clients on a variety of tax issues, and that's why I was particularly interested in your ideas on how we're going to help people get a fair shake who are out there in the system by themselves. So I intend to support you three. We're going to try to get all 6 of the applicants through. I'd like to do, I think Senator Crapo would like to do it as soon as we possibly could, and we're targeting before the Senate leaves for the August break, and if there's any additional information that the 3 of you have that you'd like us to consider, please get it to us. And regarding questions for the record for the senators, the deadline to submit questions for the record will be this Monday, July 15th at 5 p.m. The deadline is firm. We thank everyone for their cooperation, and our hearing is adjourned. Good.